Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar. Please give us a couple more minutes as more people are joining in. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to the Citrix Ready webinar series. My name is Rubal Walia. I'll be your host for today. And we have a very interesting topic at hand today. We're going to be talking about optimized Microsoft Teams. We're going to be talking about accelerated graphics. And really, we've created this magic recipe between Citrix and IGEL. And there are quite a lot of exciting things we've planned up for you. So sit tight. Before we get into it, a few housekeeping details. This webinar is being recorded and we'll share the recording with you within the next 24 hours. Please feel free to type in your questions if you have while the webinar is going on, and please use the question and answer panel on the platform to do that. If there are questions that are specific to you, we'll try and answer them over chat. But if the questions are applicable to the audience in general, we have a formal Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So please feel free to type the questions as they come to your mind. With that, let me quickly bring on speakers for today. First on, I'd like to ask Frederick to come real quick and talk about Frederick, who you are and what you do at IGEL.
Yeah, hi, thanks Rubal. I'm Fredrik Brattstig. I'm a tech evangelist at IGEL. I'm based in Sweden, but working more or less globally. And yeah, that's me.
Awesome, thank you so much. Glad you could make it to the webinar. Next up, my good friend James. James, you want to quickly come on and tell the audience who you are and what you do at Citrix?
Hey guys, my name is James Su. I'm a product manager at Citrix, currently covering the HDX multimedia technology. And today I'm very happy to have the opportunity to join, deliver this webinar with IGEL.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you could help me move to the next slide, please. I'm just going to spend a quick minute to talk about Citrix Ready. Many of you may have attended our previous webinars, and some of you may be new to this. So Citrix Ready as a program has been in existence at Citrix for the past 13+ years. And what we've been able to do in these 13 years is really create this ecosystem of partner technologies which are compatible with Citrix. So tomorrow, when our customers want to evaluate and make purchasing decisions on the third-party solutions on top of their infrastructure, this is where they come to. So we run a very robust marketplace, which is found at citrixready.citrix.com. So in case you want to see fantastic solutions like IGEL, please visit a marketplace and check out the solutions there. Next slide, please. We are also running a quick promo on this webinar. So every 10th attendee on the webinar will receive a pair of earbuds. I'm afraid this is applicable to US only because of some logistics challenges that we are having. So if you're based in the US geographically, please expect a pair of headsets if you're lucky and the 10th person on the webinar. With that, let me hand this over to Jim, I guess, to sort of walk through what IGEL does, and then we'll get rolling with the webinar.
Thank you, Rubal. Welcome everyone to the webinar. My name is Jim Erdo. I'm based in Fort Lauderdale. I just wanted to give you a quick overview about IGEL and what we do and what you're going to see today. We consider ourselves the next gen Edge OS for cloud workspaces. We've been around for quite a while. I'm sure many of you know IGEL and who we are. 450 employees globally with over 4 million users and seats, active users under management. And we've been a Citrix partner since 2003. So we have a long history and pedigree with working well with Citrix and their engineering team, as well as their sales and marketing teams. What you're going to see today is that we make a purpose-built, highly performance operating system that's very easy to manage and it's very secure. It helps you if you need to repurpose legacy hardware. As we all see today, we've got a crunch when it comes to getting new hardware with the chipset shortages that we're all experiencing. So there's a solution here for that. Helps you to rapidly deploy to thousands of users very quickly. And we actually do have over 100,000 users under management at a single location with a single customer. So we're excited to show this to you today. We envision a world where all workspaces will be accessed from the cloud and be cloud delivered. So thank you again for joining. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to James Su.
Thank you, Jim. All right, so without further ado, we're going to start with jumping into the agenda that we're going to cover today. We're going to start off by a little bit introduction of Citrix HDX multimedia optimization and talk about Teams optimization, a little bit of architecture histories. And then we're going to dive into some unified communication applications optimization decision trees. So that will help customers select the best options to deliver the multimedia unified communication application as well. And then followed by the IGEL team is going to talk about their IGEL OS and do some demonstration, and which is very exciting. You know, it's more than just the words that we're saying here. We're actually going to show you some of the demonstration here is very interesting, and we're going to showcase some of the joint solution together and how we deliver high performance user experience leveraging IGEL OS on the endpoint and Citrix HDX protocol. All right, next slide. All right, so Citrix HDX Teams optimization is sort of our fourth generation of the optimization solution compared, you know, from the early stage. We start with the just camera redirections, audio redirections, and then we move into the RTOP solutions, you know, which is the plugin using our virtual channel. And now what we have here is an integrated solution that that is very low touch in terms of deployment. So the Teams optimization component is built in CWA client, both Windows, Linux, and actually Mac as well. There's a tech preview going on in Chrome OS at the moment. So if you are interested in doing those, you can also take a look at that. And the idea here is that we want to make the implementation much easier for the administrator. So there is a small piece of code that's actually running in Microsoft Teams and detects is running in Citrix environment. If it detects that, it will actually starting to offload the media engine away from the actual Teams application itself. So all the calls will be initiated on the CWA client side. And this is currently made available in our CWA Linux client, and IGEL have stepped up and implemented this in their IGEL OS devices on x86 platform. At the moment, we only support x86, and you know, later on we will look at the also migrating this in other CPU platform as well. Next slide. All right, so you know, in the real-time communication software ecosystem, there's a lot of options, right? So we see some real-time communication software is purely web-based. So the modern software, some of them are web-based. If you want to offload these applications, you can leverage our browser content redirection solution that is part of our Citrix HDX multimedia, which only redirect the browser components to the endpoints, and the endpoint will be rendering all these web page on its own on the client side. So this is a built-in feature in the Citrix HDX, but the administrator will need to configure that with the whitelist allow list URL to do browser content redirection. So you can put some unified communication applications that you're dealing with, things like, for example, Google Meet, for example. These are web-based only meeting tools. So you can actually redirect those URL to the endpoint and have the client render. Now, if you are dealing with an environment where you are not implementing or you don't have the URL whitelisted, the system will automatically fall back using what we call the audio and webcam redirection. So these are features that's supported by IGEL OS as well. Now, the other thing is, you could be dealing with the second option is WebRTC based applications, and if you're dealing with the WebRTC based applications, MS Teams is one of the sort of trailblazer that in this particular implementation inside Citrix. We work with Microsoft, implemented this, and if they detect that it's running on Citrix, it will automatically enable the WebRTC redirection and running the WebRTC engine on the client. We are also starting to open this up to a lot of other unified communication vendors. Currently, we have an SDK that's available through our Citrix Ready program. We have a unified communication SDK that currently made available for some of the unified communication vendors offers. One of the early ones have adopted this is RingCentral. So they also have capability of detecting they're running on Citrix, and then they can leverage our optimization. And the beauty of this is that there's no client plugin need to be installed. So they will be just, they toggle in the software to turn on or turn off the offload capability. And if obviously, if you run in a situation where the client is not capable, then we will fall back using webcam and audio redirection as well. Last one is virtual channel, which is a longest running solutions out there, which is using virtual channel to control a client plugin, and that's supplied by vendor. Today, we have a lot of vendors doing this, and some of them are listed here as well. Okay. So without further ado, let's take a look at what kind of demonstration and the features that IGEL OS can provide us.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, James. So let's have a look at IGEL OS from scratch, so to speak, the capabilities of IGEL OS and the characteristics. So basically, IGEL OS for x86 is hardware independent and runs on any x86 based hardware, like PCs, laptops, and thin clients from other vendors. So you could reuse your existing estate of devices and reinstall those with IGEL OS. The IGEL OS software solution, the operating system by itself, is certified Citrix Ready and Citrix Ready Premium. And of course, you have selectable IGEL hardware models to match your different use cases. And we appear on Citrix Ready Premium, and also Citrix Ready HTX 3D Pro. So depending on the model, of course. And IGEL OS is managed by the IGEL UMS, the Universal Management Suite, controlling thousands and thousands of devices from one single pane of glass. And it's extremely powerful management, yet very simple to actually get going and maintain your environment. And you can anywhere manage all those IGEL OS devices using the IGEL ICG, which stands for IGEL Cloud Gateway. So it will enable you to do real-time control of your work from home, work from anywhere scenarios, or remote sites, and whatever it might be, of course. So let's dig into Microsoft Teams optimization, where the use case for Teams optimization or any kind of optimization offloading is to reduce the CPU usage of the server side, and of course reduce the network load of server side, and also get a more native user experience by rendering the audio and the video locally on the device. So how do you get going? So in terms of Teams optimization is enabled by default in IGEL OS. So you basically just need to configure your Citrix connection, and Teams is enabled. Teams optimization is enabled by default. And for the server side, the VDAs, so to speak, there is Teams optimization also enabled by default, which means that you can have a delivery controller of an older version and a VDA of a newer version and run, utilize Teams optimization anyways. And the installation of Microsoft Teams is done using the guidelines on citrix.com. It's actually very simple. Just search for Citrix install Teams, and you will get the first hit to the correct document. Except for Teams, there are additional unified collaboration integrations in IGEL OS. So we have, since ages ago, Microsoft Skype HDX optimization. We have the Zoom VDI optimization and Cisco WebEx Teams optimization. And those 3+ teams are using not really exactly the same kind of technologies, but the user experience is actually about the same cross-platform. If that is not enough, then we have the possibility to use HDX webcam redirection plus HDX audio input and output redirection. This will allow you to use the webcam and audio video in any, understand me correctly now, 32-bit application on server side to get this going. This is a limitation currently, so you need to have 32-bit applications on server side to get the webcam working in this scenario. And of course, IGEL OS supports browser content redirection for those use cases. So now let's have a look at a video of me doing a video call to myself. It's a pre-recorded video, but I will start the video now. So the environment that I'm using is I'm using an IGEL UD 3 hardware device with a Logitech C922 camera. And the opposite endpoint is an IGEL UD 7 with a Poly Eagle Eye camera. And I will roll the video. So I will try to comment on the video during the playback. Here I'm on the IGEL OS device, logging into Citrix and connecting to my session host. And there I have my desktop. This is speeded up 1.4 about, so just to shorten the introduction pace. Here I'm opening up the task manager just to see the CPU usage, and I also open up PuTTY terminal and connecting back to my endpoint to see the CPU usage on my endpoint. Teams started automatically during the login, and I'm just checking that HDX is optimized and also checking that my camera is appearing in session. Now the playback speed is 1.0, so it's not going faster than it should. Here we see that I have connected to an existing meeting between 2 different persons, even if it's only me, and it seems to be working very well. I'm hanging up the phone or the meeting, and then I'm waiting for an incoming call. And there the incoming call comes, and I respond. It's an incoming video call. I respond, and the pickup is quick, and everything works. So let's have a look at the utilization on client side. You see the CPU usage on server side all the time. On client side, we see that HDX RTC is using 120% of the CPU. but this is the amount of CPU cycles on a single core. If I expand and look at the different cores, I see that I'm using about 50% of the CPU cores. And going full screen, which is of course also of interest, you see that the CPU usage is basically untouched. You mainly see that the CPU usage goes up if you are like changing the size of the windows and so on. So the redirection is working perfectly fine. Now I'm doing the other way around, so I'm calling the opposite part just to show that that works. So let's switch gears and look at advanced H.264 accelerated graphics in Citrix environments and IGEL OS endpoints. So a few different reasons to use hardware acceleration, accelerated graphics, where increased user density is one of them, of course. Enabling a rich user experience for those really advanced graphics use cases. And also enabling the possibility to provide computer-aided designers and video editing and such programs to your remote users. So in terms of the IGEL configuration, you basically just, to enable H.264 hardware acceleration, you basically just open up the IGEL Citrix profile and go to the codec entry under Citrix Global, and you enable graphic codec H.264 deep compression, and also check the accelerated H.264 deep compression codec. This will enable you to utilize the GPU in your endpoint to do the decoding of the H.264 stream. And how to determine if your endpoint is capable to actually do H.264 decoding. Most current chipsets or GPUs are able to do H.264 decoding, but in certain limitations, of course. So this is a terminal that I'm open up on one of my UD3 devices, where I can type the command vdpow-info, which will give me a response of a lot of characteristics of the GPU that I'm using. If looking at the H.264 baseline, main, and high pieces within this response, I see that I can do 4096 times 4096 pixels of H.264 decoding, which means that this is turned into microblocks, so you can actually fit dual 4K screens within 4096 times 4096. So it's not a physical dimension, it's more of a technical dimension. And of course, when you are going to provide this kind of environment to your users, it's really hard to say this specific device or this specific GPU on the client side can do this, whatever resolution it might be. It's always about testing before you validate the configuration. I mean, it might be that you can do dual 4K hardware acceleration, but maybe you cannot do the acceleration for dual 4K in 60 frames per second or 30 frames per second. So there's always a test that needs to be done. So we're going to look at a video again, and the profiles, the policies on Citrix side is actually the ones that I have here that I'm using, where the most important piece from my experience is to optimize for 3D graphics workloads and use video codec for compression for the entire screen when you're using Linux endpoints. And of course, use hardware encoding for video codec. So I created two screenshots where I'm using a 3D application on a Windows VM connected through an IGEL OS device. Here we have the VM without the GPU, and you see that I have 4 sockets and 8 virtual processors in this machine, and you see that the CPU usage is about 100%, more or less, all the time. Looking at the same thing when having an NVIDIA GPU accelerating the graphics, it drastically reduces the CPU load. Actually, the performance on the previous example is pretty decent, but this one is 100% flawless. And imagine that you have multiple of those VMs running in your hosts, in your servers, and they are doing the same kind of tasks at the same time. When you have the NVIDIA GPUs powering your VM backends, you can certainly imagine that it will affect your users if you are not using hardware acceleration. So let's have a look at another video on H.264 performance. So the video is about to start to play, and first off, we are getting into a full screen session where we are using superposition, which is a benchmarking tool for accelerated graphics. This is a real killer for GPUs, and we are actually able to do this in 2560 times 1440 using an NVIDIA GPU, and we are at about 60 frames per second rendered in the data center. Now we switch over to Unity, which is application that you can do more or less any. You can create games, you can do architectural work, and so on. And now through to FBX Review, which allows you to inspect 3D models and zoom and turn and twist. And the performance is amazing. And then let's have a look at some YouTube playback, just for reference. Here you have a high definition video in the high definition 2.5K screen. And looking at something that is having some more action. As you can see, the performance is very, very good on this high resolution and the video playback. Then have a look at 3D Studio Max, which where I'm twisting a F-16 aircraft. Just as you can see, the different viewports has different aspects of how I show the airplane. Here we are on Autodesk Recap, which is an application where you can 360 photo environments and then relive those environments. And by the end, we are going to look at Filmora video editing, where I will add a few video clips and combine them together. Just to show that it's possible to do this kind of heavy demanding workload and just edit the videos streams and video screens. So this is, as you can see, the same video that I'm editing as I was showing previously. So adding another track and resizing that track and dragging and dropping it on the video and checking the playback result. Some more on this on the next video. So going back to my presentation again. So the final piece will be to have a look at the N Computing RX 420 powered by IGEL. So IGEL and N Computing has done a joint venture where N Computing is producing the hardware and IGEL is producing the software for this device. You buy the device from N Computing with IGEL OS pre-installed, and you license the device using an IGEL Workspace Edition license in a general manner. The initial release includes Citrix Workspace app, Citrix Workspace Hub, and the Chromium browser. So as the ARM platform for Citrix on Linux doesn't support HDX Teams optimization, we have to rely on HDX webcam redirection, but it's actually working quite well. The next video that I'm playing will, in the beginning, have some audio where me and Jeff Karlberg are having a discussion so that you can hear the quality of the audio coming through. It's only a few seconds, so pay attention. So within IGEL OS, to help you support your users with HDX webcam redirection, we have created a new tool that is called Automatic HDX Webcam Configuration, which allows you to set on different levels the quality of the camera, which will also impact, of course, the performance and network utilization between the endpoint and the server. So let's dig into the video.
Citrix are running Teams using webcam redirection, or actually webcam optimization. It's not redirection in this case. And
so there you heard the quality of the call, and this was actually recorded using a meeting speakerphone and external mic, so it's not optimal. What's actually quite interesting is when you're using HDX webcam redirection in this way, you see that live captions is working, and you see that the virtual backgrounds is working as you're used to in native Teams usage. Here I'm changing my background image, and Jeff is changing his background all the time. And you see that the CPU utilization is quite stable all the time. Here we are doing screen sharing, where Jeff is sharing his screen with me and did some video playback. And also having a look at the same, but in full screen on the N Computing device in the Citrix session. And you see that the performance is actually quite good. It's more than acceptable, I would say. So what can this device do in terms, the RX 420 do in terms of hardware acceleration? So I'm using a full HD session. Here I'm using 3D Studio Max and twisting and turning a plane, going then over to the benchmark application again superposition. And just to see that we are able to actually playback. It's actually not a playback, it's real-time rendering and hardware H.264 delivery of the video. I'm hoping that the video is coming through well because it is 100% flawless on the local screen. Here I'm doing the same thing as previously, but using the RX 420. I'm using Filmora to combine some video clips. As you can see again, it's the same video clips as I have been using to create the videos for this presentation. And I'm adding 4 different video streams at the same time and just validating that the playback is working. And then I do a rendering, which actually goes very quick, and we'll try to do playback of the result of the video, and as you can see, it's working perfectly fine. So this is one of the use cases where H.264 hardware acceleration is very beneficial. And now let's have a look at the final piece, which is the Workspace Hub, where I'm just showing an IGEL powered RX 420. And I'm logging into my iPhone to my Citrix session, and I will cast my Citrix session to the Workspace Hub RX 420 powered by IGEL. So of course, logging into the Citrix session and then open up the casting. And I scan the QR code, and I have to confirm to cast the session. And the session is transferred to the RX 420, and I can use the phone as a mouse pad, but I can also use the mouse and the keyboard, and that is attached to the RX 420. And then disconnect the session and bring it over to the phone. So that was the 3 different pieces that I wanted to cover today. Here you have a screen of quite a few different resources you can use. First of all, to check all the Citrix Ready showcase for IGEL, go to citrixready.igel.com, sorry, /igel-technology. And of course, igel.com for general information of IGEL. There is an email address that you could send your inquiries to at citrix@igel.com if you have questions about this, what you've seen in the presentation and so on. And I also have a personal blog that is called virtualbrat.com, where I post a lot of information on Citrix and hardware acceleration and IGEL and virtual reality and remoting sessions and so on. So with that, I would like to say thank you so much for listening and watching, and now it's time for the Q&A pieces.
Thank you so much, Fredrik. Quite an insightful presentation.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, now's the time to shoot. All right, I have a few already there, Fredrik, so maybe you can take this one. There's a question by a gentleman: how can I set up a thumb drive with IGEL and work off AWS and Azure as well as on-prem servers?
Well, a thumb drive like a USB stick to connect to those different resources. That's certainly possible. So you can buy the IGEL UD Pocket, which is actually a USB thumb drive where you boot your device, your x86-based device on the UD Pocket and connect. We have support for those resources.
Awesome. Another one is Teams optimization is available in minimum virtual apps advanced services and not in virtual app standard on premises. James, do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, that's the licensing limitation at the moment, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's park that question for now, and we can get back to you over an email. Is there a roadmap for developer support to 64-bit?
Yeah, I think this question needs a little clarification. I think 64-bit, from application perspective, running in VDA, we always support 64-bit application running on VDA. But for a special feature like webcam redirection, for example, on Linux CWA client, there is a limitation that we cannot redirect redirect webcam for 64-bit app. Okay. So this is actually on the roadmap. We're working on releasing that in the next couple quarters. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Frederick, couple of questions. Let me combine these. So what kind of hardware did you use for your tests and what configuration? And there's also a question around if webcam C930E also supported.
C930E is functional, definitely. I've been using the 930E quite a lot of times, and it's perfectly fine. We also have a possibility to enable, if your camera has the possibility to do H.264 encoding, we have the possibility to utilize that. In terms of the hardware for the x86 piece, the demos that I'm using, all of them for the endpoint has been UD3 devices, IGEL UD3 devices. If we are looking at the VM specifications for the backend, it's hard to say because I'm flipping between different profiles all the time, but I believe that I was using a 4Q or 6Q NVIDIA P40. So I split the P4 in 4 or 6 pieces. The 4Q would give you 4 gigabytes of frame buffer. The 6Q would give you 6 gigabytes of frame buffer. But in terms of the hardware acceleration, it depends on mainly the resolution, to be honest. So the 4Q profile is certainly overkill in the examples that I was showing. I would say a 2Q profile would be suitable for all the things that I did.
Yeah, and also I think the customer's resolution of the screens also impact a little bit, right? So if you don't need a 4K display, and you can use a smaller profile. Achieve that. So that's
exactly. I mean, the demos on the x86 based side was using 2560 x 1440. The performance on the UD3 device connected to the same VDA is performing exactly the same. So it was just an occurrence that it was 2560 x 1440.
Okay. Can you also talk to what would be the minimum configuration required to run graphics with the IGEL machine?
So the minimum, I would say that you can actually go quite well without using hardware acceleration, because the regular codec is working very well. So it's just that you are using much more CPU on server side. When you're using hardware acceleration, of course, your GPU chip needs to be able to do H.264 decoding, which most GPUs can do today. So depending, I mean, you shouldn't go for the cheapest possible device and try to do advanced accelerated graphics. But I mean, the UD3 device is something like 350 euros, something like that, and it's a very powerful device in terms of GPU decoding. So it's all about testing.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned that testing, right? IGEL also have a sort of internal testing applications built in the IGEL OS devices, right?
Yes.
Especially for the GPU validation. I think that's a very important step that customer, before they roll this out to the end user, spend a little bit of time validating the compatibility of their hardware with IGEL OS.
Yeah. The blog that I was mentioning in the virtualbreath.com is taking showing a lot of use cases, and also shows how to actually get there, how to configure your IGEL devices, and how to validate if the IGEL devices can, the IGEL OS based devices, no matter if it's somebody else's hardware or IGEL hardware, how well they will have a potential at least to perform.
So I think that's all the time we have today for questions. I see tons of questions on Q&A panel. But rest assured, guys will take up those questions over emails. I just want to tell you how you can claim your earbuds. If you can move to the next slide, please.
Yes.
So it's pretty simple. What we'll do is, in the next 24 hours, please expect an email from us, where we ask you some information around where you want these earbuds shipped. If you can just respond to that email real quick, we'll have the earbuds shipped to you, as soon as possible. As I mentioned earlier, due to logistics challenge, we can only ship these devices within US for now. So apologies if you are joining this webinar today from any other location. So with that, Frederick, let me give you any last words, and James.
I'm fine, thank you. It was a pleasure to be able and invited to present, and thank you so much.
Yes,
Yep.
and Rubel and the Citrix team, thanks James and Rubel for hosting us. We look forward to doing this again. I know this is a very important topic for everyone, and we're talking about maybe having a part 2 to this, so stay tuned, and we'll try to keep you abreast of new developments around Teams optimization and graphics between IGEL and Citrix. So thanks again, Rubel.
Hey,
Thank you.
Frederick, can you switch back to the slide that shows the resources?
Yes.
The resource page. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, guys, if you have any questions or any information that you want to inquire regarding the IGEL and Citrix solutions, please feel free to use that Citrix at IGEL email to communicate your questions to IGEL. And there's a lot of good information on the virtualbrats.com website. So for any of the configuration related recommendation, you should take a look at that site. And I have actually learned quite a bit just browsing that website and then understand how IGEL devices is configured and so on and so forth. So please leverage those resources. And I'm very happy to have the opportunity to work with this amazing company to present these sessions, and looking forward for more follow-up sessions in the future. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, James, Frederick, Jem. It was a pleasure hosting this webinar with you guys. And most of all, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time. This now concludes our webinar. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.